As you grow your practice, one of the things that you'll need are some good systems in place that will help you in automating your practice and making sure everything runs smoothly. TherapyNotes is the #1 provider of electronic health record systems for mental health providers. TherapyNotes has everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, create rich documentation, and bill insurance right at your fingertips. Their streamlined software is accessible wherever and whenever you need it. So go check them out today, therapynotes.com. And if you use the coupon code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get your first 2 months free. So check them out today, therapynotes.com. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 126 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, folks. I'm Gordon Brewer. Glad you've joined us for the podcast. If this is your first time to listen in, glad you found us. Glad you're with us. Hope you'll come back for more. And if you're back for more, glad you're back. Glad you're with me on this journey. And as I always say, I hope you're finding the content of this podcast helpful for you in your private practice journey. So I got to kind of laugh because I know all of us are pretty weary, I guess is a good word, of talking about COVID-19. And so the good news is that this particular episode is not about that specifically, but I think it has some application for what we're going through right now during this crisis. I've got my guest, Annie Schuessler, and Annie is a fellow podcaster out there. She has the Rebel Therapist podcast, and we're going to have links to the show notes here to her podcast. And I'm so glad that Annie connected with me, and we had a great conversation. We actually recorded this back at the end of February before most of this stuff hit, so I had to change gears and really address the things around the pandemic that we're in the middle of. But I think the topic that we're talking about today is going to be a good fit anyway, even though we're not really talking about pandemics and COVID-19 and that sort of thing. Annie's another one of those like-minded people, at least for me, she's like-minded, and that we tend to think outside the box in terms of how we run our therapy practices. And I guess the message that I hear from Annie that I just can't thank her enough for just kind of being on the same page, like I said, with this, is that there's so much more that we can do as therapists beyond just the therapy room. I think there's a lot of opportunities for us in terms of just our knowledge base and just how we can help people in ways beyond just doing therapy. And so that's a big part of what we talk about today in this, and just other ways of doing business. And so looking forward to Annie joining us here in just a minute. One of the things, again, here we are in the last week of April, and wanted to remind you about the coupon code that I've got for all of my courses on Teachable. During the month of April, I've had that out there so that you can get all of my courses at 50% off. So use the coupon code Spring 2020. And if you'll go to practiceoftherapy.com, and you'll see at the top of the page there a link to the online courses that I have available. One being the G Suite for Therapists course. And that course is designed to teach you the ins and outs of Google G Suite. And G Suite is the paid version of Google account. And with that, you can make it HIPAA secure, HIPAA compliant, and the course will give you ideas about how you can use G Suite to manage your practice and use it as a practice management tool. One of the things I'm doing kind of behind the scenes here is I'm also putting together kind of an add-on to that course where I'm really going to delve into more specifically how to create systems and processes for your practice using G Suite, so that you'll have tools just to make yourself more automated, run more smoothly, and just make things kind of run like a well-oiled machine, as I like to say. So look forward to that. I'm working on getting things together. I'm doing kind of some questioning. I've got a group on a Facebook group, G Suite for Therapists group. It's a private Facebook group where people ask questions and talk about G Suite and how they're using it in their practices. And that group has just exploded over the last several weeks. We're approaching over 400 members to that private group. So go check that out. It's just the G Suite users group, G Suite for Therapists users group on Facebook. I'll try to remember to put a link here in the show notes for that as well. So, but anyway, got that coming down the pike just around the tools of Google G Suite. And then also with that coupon code, you can get my other course, Money Matters in Private Practice, which again is a course that I teamed up with my friend Julie Harris from Green Oak Accounting. So my tongue's getting tied. It's weird working from home, and I apologize a little bit for the echo in here. I didn't really have this as insulated here, and I didn't really want to sit in the closet to record. So anyway, I digress. So anyway, without further ado, here's my friend Annie Schuessler, and so glad to have her on the podcast. Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. And I'm so excited for you all to get to know Annie Schuessler. And Annie and I met online, and Annie reached out to me, and she's another kindred spirit in this whole private practice space. So welcome, Annie. Glad you're here with me today.
Thank you so much, Gordon. So nice to be here.
Yes. And Annie is, I believe you're located in San Francisco?
That's right.
Yep. Great. So she was gracious enough to start early with me being on Eastern time. So that's good. So, but Annie, as I start with everyone, tell folks a little bit more about yourself and your private practice journey and how you've landed where you've landed.
Yeah, thank you. And I also want to say, I love talking to you, Gordon. And I feel like as much as I think people are tuning in for all of the great information that they get, you just also have the kindest voice. And so
thank you.
It's just really nice to talk to you.
Well, thanks.
So for me, I've been a therapist for over 20 years now. And my private practice started back 20 years ago. And when I was starting out, I really had a hard time with the business side of things. And I found that even though I was enjoying the work and I was loving my clients, I really had a hard time embracing the fact that I was a business owner. And I'm kind of a nerdy person. So for me, the way that I handled that was that I did a ton of research. I learned a lot about business, and I really kind of cracked the code for myself about how to build a therapy practice. And so that's kind of like chapter one, is creating that therapy practice and getting into the business side of it, starting to share what I was learning with my friends and colleagues. And then chapter two, I had this really thriving therapy practice. I was specializing in couples therapy and really with high conflict couples. I spent a fortune getting certified in the Gottman method, which I still absolutely love and value, and learning emotionally focused couples therapy. So I had this thriving couples practice. I was bringing in a couple of other clinicians to work with me so that we could handle the inflow of clients. And then I had this moment where I realized that I was headed for burnout, that this practice I had worked so hard to build and that I had dreamed of, now that it was happening, it actually wasn't right for me. and I was headed to burning out, and I was headed to dreading the amount of sessions I had every week. And I was kind of freaked out about this, honestly, because I was the major breadwinner in my family. And, we have a couple of kids, and I was really concerned about even telling my wife that this was what was on my mind, that I needed to make some kind of pivot.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, she was totally supportive. And when I told her that I needed to expand my business in a different direction, that I needed to go beyond the therapy room and do some different kinds of work, she was really supportive. And that's where kind of chapter 3 starts, where we agreed, yeah, I can dive into this. I can learn about this. And so about 10 years ago, I became a business coach. And so that's where this whole journey started, of creating what's now Rebel Therapist, and working with therapists and healers on their businesses and taking their businesses beyond the therapy room.
Right.
It's a long answer there.
Yeah, well, that was and as you were saying all that, I was just thinking your journey kind of parallels mine as well. I mean, I think I've, I'm as I say, as a kid with my clients, I'm kind of the old fart in the room, and so I realized that I love the work, but at the same time, you kind of reach a place where you kind of plateau, and you just kind of and it's not really that you hit a ceiling, but it's just kind of like, okay, you want to do more and you want to help in a different direction. And I think that's, again, very parallel journey with you. It's the reason I started the practice of therapy, is that, I realized, okay, there's a lot of people out there that want to do some good and truly help people, but they don't have necessarily the framework or the know-how to put it all together into a business. And so, so that's exciting.
Yeah. And it's really liberating that we get to use different parts of ourselves.
Yes.
In these new businesses.
Right. Yeah. So in your work in doing this so far, I think the thing that resonates for me is, I think all of us have kind of that creative side, and being able to feed that. What are you finding with the people that you're working with that really, I guess maybe the pain points is part of it, but also why they'd want to, delve into something outside the therapy room?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I've been noticing a couple of different kind of types of folks who are really drawn to creating a business beyond the therapy room. And of course, there's a ton of overlap. I'm not trying to put people in boxes, but one kind of person is headed to burnout. So they are hitting a ceiling in terms of the number of hours they can work. They have built a successful private practice, and they can just see, all right, now what? I've built this thing to as far as it can go, and I want to use my time differently. And I want to be able to kind of leverage my time and leverage all of this learning and experience into something else as well. And then the other kind of person may not even have a full practice yet, and they may just be growing their private practice, but they already see that there's another part of themselves that they want to bring out into the world, or there's another message they want to bring out into the world. And like you said, creativity is a huge value for them. And so from the very beginning, they want to create some kind of program beyond the therapy room so that they can express their full selves and work with people in these different ways.
Right. Yeah. So what are some of the different ways that you have seen that come to fruition for people in terms of getting beyond the therapy room and just trading your time and your expertise for money in the traditional way in which we sit with people in the therapy room? What are you seeing that resonates with people?
What I'm seeing really work for people is to create some kind of program that they can get started with quickly. So we tend to have these big dreams and these visions of what it could look like, what our empires could look like. And so that part, people have amazing ideas. And so people dream up community memberships, they dream up, retreats and workshops and group coaching programs, all of these wonderful things. And those are absolutely possible. And the first step is creating something that is really doable more quickly, so that before they've grown a huge audience, they can actually start testing a pilot program, or a beta program beyond the therapy room, and then grow that, reiterate that, and then grow that towards that vision of the empire. So that's what I'm seeing when people are able to do that, to start quickly and test something really early in the process. Then I see them getting early wins and being able to move forward, as opposed to maybe folks who have this huge vision and maybe don't have a bridge between how am I going to get from here to there.
Right.
And so then maybe even saying, oh, well, that's overwhelming. Don't know how to do that.
Right. Right. It's really kind of moving from the the paradigm shift of doing one-to-one work to doing the one-to-many work, I think is the way I think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And in growing a therapy practice, I'm not trying to say it's, excuse me, I'm not trying to say it's easy to grow a therapy practice. I know there's a ton to learn, but we see people around us doing it. There are people to learn from and to kind of model ourselves after. But once you go into this terrain of growing something beyond the therapy room, you really have to create your own vision. And I think that's both exciting and overwhelming for folks.
Right, right. Yeah. And so, one of the things that comes to mind for me and just thinking about, going beyond the therapy room and growing things beyond that, as you mentioned earlier, there is a cap to that. There is only so many clients we can see in a day, only, as an individual doing the one-to-one work or the one, doing couples work or whatever. There's only so many of those we can pack into a day. And so you reach that ceiling or that kind of that plateau, if you will. And so then you have to really figure out, okay, how do I create passive income for myself? And there's a lot of different avenues with that. And again, you want to throw some ideas out there for people that might be thinking about that. I think, kind of the next logical step for a lot of people is, okay, I'm going to start a group practice. I'm going to, bring on other clinicians so I can kind of duplicate my efforts. And that, I think that's a very lucrative way to kind of move into it. But what are some of the other ways that you're finding that people are resonating with?
Yeah. And thanks for bringing that one up, because that is a fabulous way to go. And it's not for everybody, right? Because I actually tried that myself, and I ran a group practice for a few years. And I discovered that what I really didn't want to be was a manager. So for folks who that's a good fit for, fantastic. But yeah, so some of the things that I see working really well for people are starting with perhaps either a very small group coaching program or even a one-on-one coaching program. So creating a separate website. This is going to be a separate business so that you're not taking any chances with your ethics or with your license, creating a separate business, and then just starting with one program. So it could be one-on-one coaching where you're really walking people through a process within a very particular niche and a very particular outcome. Or it could be a small group coaching program where you've got, you could even start with 3 people who you're walking through a process that brings about profound change in one particular area. And then iterating that and looking at what worked best here and, what do I need to shift for next time? So I see people growing their businesses into, membership communities can be such a wonderful way to bring people together who share a particular problem, who share a particular identity maybe, and to be able to add value by bringing them together, which is something we don't get to do as therapists. And then I also see, of course, people creating courses, and that can be such a rewarding way to bring together a lot of the stuff that you've learned and that you love teaching over and over again, to be able to create a course out of it. And I will add, for that one, sometimes people come to me and they're dreaming of creating kind of an evergreen course where they're going to create this thing and then they're never going to touch it again and they're going to make a ton of money. I don't really advise that. I don't really see that working, except for like, it works really well for people like Oprah. But I advise people to at least start with a lot of interaction where you're just adding tons of value by actually being with the people who you're serving, and then pulling back from there. But yeah, those are some of the kinds of business models that I see really helping people thrive, and that I also see people really enjoying. So looking for what is it that you like, how do you thrive? Like I was just talking about how you have this really kind voice. I can imagine in your programs, you're bringing a lot of kindness and you're helping people feel comfortable. You're bringing people together. So looking at like, what, for the listener, what are your superpowers and how can you bring those into a pilot program to be more of you and bring a lot of value?
Right. Yeah. One of the things that I know that in just our emails, one of the things that you touched on is, therapists and counselors are really well suited for doing this kind of thing. Yes. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that kind of excites me is that this self-help and personal development industry is enormous, and I really see, I'm not at all wanting to put down anybody who doesn't have our particular training, because I know a lot of folks have a ton to offer from their personal experiences, and that is fantastic. And people who are licensed therapists, trained healers, we really should be some of the leaders of this industry. We've got so much experience and we care so much about the ethics. And we're not in this just to make a buck. We're really in this to transform people's lives. So I think we're in the perfect position to step into this industry and to create our own programs.
Right. One of the people that I interviewed on a previous podcast episode was Katie Morton. And I don't know if you know who she is or not, but as you're speaking of this, I was just thinking about, most of us go into this profession, counselor, therapist, psychologist, that sort of thing, out of a sense of truly wanting to help people. And I think one of the things that we can limit ourselves by is thinking that the only way to help is through sitting with folks in the therapy room. But my goodness, there's a whole other world of people that are helping in really kind of other ways. And Katie was one of the people that kind of got me thinking about that more, and that she has a wonderful YouTube channel that just deals with all things mental health.
Yes.
And so I think being able to tap into that and being able to look for ways in which you can, as like you said, leverage that to where you're helping people, but it's also with different avenues of help.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's someone who, just to give you another example, I'm going to have to check out Katie. That sounds exciting. There's a woman named Kelsey Harper who's right now building a community and programs for women who are survivors of sexual assault. And her work is, because she's creating a podcast and she's creating a community, she's going to be able to help people in a totally different way than you can when you're just meeting with someone one-on-one in the therapy room, bringing people together and helping people empower each other. This is really exciting stuff. And it's, like you said, it's the way that it's really limitless. the
Yeah.
ways that we can be
Right.
working with people.
Right. I just had an aha as you were saying that. One of the things that most of us do when working with clients is we'll give them homework because we know that really the work of therapy uh, really occurs outside the therapy room when they go to apply the things that they've talked about and explored and all of that. And, we have a great opportunity to kind of coach people through that outside the therapy room. And so, yeah. And so I think being able to tap into the kind of that niche is a good thing, and being able to think about it in that way.
Yeah. And being able to allow people to support each other in doing their homework, I think is so helpful. I don't know about you,
Mm-hmm.
but I've had a lot of people not do their homework when I assign it in therapy. And I find in my coaching programs, people get a lot done when they're in a cohort working together. So there's
Right.
something magical about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, one of the things that I've been doing is starting mastermind groups and focus groups for other therapists to do exactly that, of being able to be in a cohort where you're really with like-minded people, and you really feed that whole creative side of things and being able to see things from other people's perspectives, and that's where
Absolutely.
we grow and get ahead. So yeah.
I
So
agree. And I think a lot of the value that we're bringing, I mean, of course, we are of service and we're bringing everything we have to our programs. But at the same time, I noticed that a lot of the value is bringing these folks together. So these people who identify, for me, the people who identify as rebel therapists and want to create something magical beyond the therapy room, just by being together in a program, they're really getting a lot more done and they're getting really excited about each other's projects.
right, right. And as you have alluded to already, really the key to all of this is forging relationships, forming
Mhm.
relationships, and being able to, like you said, bring people together and to be able, because that's really why therapy works, is because you form that therapeutic relationship with the client, and that's where the healing comes and the help comes with all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, well, Annie, I know we could go on and on probably for hours talking about most all of this stuff, and I want to be respectful of your time. Tell folks how they can get in touch with you and learn more about the work that you're doing in terms of coaching and helping people and that sort of thing.
Oh, thank you, Gordon. So, yeah, the best way, because obviously you're a podcast listener, the best way would be to go on over to my podcast, Rebel Therapist, where you can just hear some stories. I interview people in every episode who are creating businesses beyond the therapy room. And then if you want to check out what I have to offer, head over to rebeltherapist.me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I guess to put you on the spot here a little bit, is there a particular story that just kind of resonated with you here lately that you've heard from somebody that's
Yeah. So this is someone who I've been working with lately. I'm working with someone who is creating a program for women corrections officers.
hmm,
So that is just really inspiring me because this is such a particular group of people with a particular set of really painful experiences. And I have no idea what those experiences are, right? I can
mhm,
only guess. But the person who's putting this together is a therapist, a social worker who was a corrections officer herself
mhm,
for several years before she became a therapist. So she's going back and she's giving back to this community by creating a program for them. So that's
mhm.
just one of the stories that's been inspiring me
Right,
lately.
right. Yeah. I love that. I love that. That's yeah, and I think that's one of the things too, and I know that uh, I stopped us and then we kept going, but one of the things that I'm really figuring out that really resonates with not only clients but other people is to be able to share our own experiences through things. And, one of the stories that I share with people are just, I guess, fun facts or interesting facts about me is I worked in the funeral business for over 18 years. I was a funeral director and was actually an embalmer and all of that kind of thing. And so it's pulling that into things is just really, I think, just kind of resonates with people to some degree in terms of we all grieve at different times. But and I guess my point with all of that is think about your own life stories and just the things that you've experienced in your own life that maybe have been learning experiences or even hardships or whatever, and to be able to share that and to be able to leverage that of being able to help others in that way. So,
oh my God, I love that. Yeah. And that there is something that you're uniquely suited to give people. And I should mention her name since I talked about her. Her name is Deborah Somerville.
Okay.
And just like Deborah, I think each of us has something that we can go back and we can give to people that probably nobody else can do.
Right. Yeah. Well, Annie, I'm so grateful to you for joining me on the podcast today, and I hope to return the favor for your podcast. I know I've already subscribed to your podcast, so be sure we'll have links to everything in the show notes here, and folks, be sure and check her out at rebeltherapist.me. So thanks, Annie.
Thank you so much, Gordon. This has been such a treat.
Yes. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed getting to hear from Annie and getting to know her and just learning about what she does. I really appreciate Annie's mindset. I mean, she and I are very much like-minded in that I think so many times we can just get stuck on just thinking of things in a certain way, and we can absolutely use our skill set as therapists to do things that are creative and do things kind of outside the box. And one of the things about this season that we're in right now with the COVID-19 is that we've had, in many ways, been forced to do that. And so I think it's a great lesson to learn. One thing that occurred to me, I was reminded of a story. I had a dear friend of mine who was a mentor earlier in my life. His name was Dr. Lane Beamer, who Lane is no longer with us. But one of the things I remember him talking about was his son had gotten a new convertible, and they were riding around in it one day and had the top down, and his son had the air conditioning on in the convertible, and he was really questioning him then on that. Aren't you wasting the cold air? Aren't you supposed to have the air conditioning off with the top down? And he said, no, not necessarily. The car doesn't know whether the top's down or not. The AC doesn't know, but I just like having the top down and having the cool air blow on me. So again, give yourself permission to ride around with the top down and have the air on. You can do it your way. So anyway, I hope that was a little something for you to think about. So thanks again to Annie Schuessler for joining me. Again, you can find her at rebeltherapist.me. So go check her out. Be sure to check out today's sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. TherapyNotes is the #1 electronic health record system for mental health providers. They're who I use in my practice, and they're absolutely one of the big hubs of my practice. So be sure and check them out. And if you use the coupon code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get your first 2 months free. So check them out, therapynotes.com. And also be sure to take advantage while you've got this little bit of time left, depending on when you're listening to this episode, through the end of April, all of my courses on the Teachable platform. you could get at half price. So use the coupon code SPRING2020 when you go to your checkout, and that will give you the discount. And so I'd say take advantage of that. So it's going to end once the end of April comes. So also, as I mentioned at the beginning, be sure to check out this Facebook group I've got going on. We've got a lot of people joining that, and it's just the G Suite for Therapists users group. And so these are people that have maybe enrolled in the course or maybe not yet, but we just talk about how we use G Suite in our practices. And it's a great forum to ask questions and get some feedback from not only me, but from other people in the group, just about how they're using those tools. And again, this kind of piggybacks on the course that I've got, G Suite for Therapists, and that's available on the Teachable platform. Again, you can get it for half price right now. Don't wait. So take care, folks. I look forward to having you back with me next week. And thank you for letting me into your ears and into your lives and letting me be part of your journey in this small way. So take care, folks. Been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.